On June 25, 1950, 5 years after the end of World War II, the Korean War began. The Communist forces in North Korea and China attempted to seize the land of South Korea. Over the next 10 minutes, we will be covering main events and the stand that the United States and the United Nations took to stop the communist movement into the South. This is The Rise Against the Reds. During World War II, the Japanese had complete control of Korea. In July of 1945, Joseph Stalin and the Soviet Union joined forces with the United States to pinch the Japanese out of Korea, with the Soviet forces attacking from the north and the U.S. attacking from the south. The plan was successful in pinching out the Japanese, and the two superpowers met at the 38th parallel, the line of latitude that split Korea. The U.S. took control of the south and the Soviets took the north. In 1947, two nations left Korea, leaving behind two completely different ways of life. The north reflected communist tendencies of the Soviet Union and China. Meanwhile, the south resembled the democratic United States. Tensions rose between north and south, and soon the inevitable would happen. On June 25, 1950, the Communist forces of the North pushed across the 38th parallel. The North Koreans attacked with a strong force of over 120,000 men. They wanted to take over Korea in one large sweep, and were getting awfully close. The North Koreans, just 2 days after the initial attack, had already captured Seoul, the South Korean capital. Following this, U.S. General Douglas MacArthur pushed the U.S. President Harry S. Truman to help support the South in fight against the communist North Korean forces. South Korea's forces were no match for the powerful North Korean army. This is when the United States looked towards the United Nations for help.
We have committed ourselves to the cause of a just and peaceful world order through the United Nations.
The United States wanted the invasion of South Korea to be brought up immediately on June 25, 1950, to the Security Councils of the United Nations. With George Kennan's containment policy in considerations, the United States were given good reason to help contain the spread of communism into Korea. The Soviet Union was not attending because they were boycotting the UN due to the recognition of Chiang Kai-shek's government in Taiwan as the official government for China instead of Mao Zedong's communist regime in Beijing. The United States argued that North Korea had broken world peace due to the invasion and wanted the communist forces to retreat back to the 38th parallel. The absence of the Soviet Union meant the resolution easily passed through the fledgling UN, with only one country abstaining from voting procedures. On June 27, 1950, the United States called on the United Nations to use force against the North Koreans because they failed to follow the resolution made on June 25th. 21 nations helped South Korea against the communists. The U.S. military coalition consisted of, as well as Australia, Great Britain, Canada, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Colombia, Ethiopia, South Africa, New Zealand, Turkey, Greece, Thailand, Philippines, and Luxembourg. Norway, Sweden, Denmark, India, and Italy also contributed military hospitals and field ambulances to the war. On July 7th of 1950, the Security Council of the United Nations made the decision that all forces supplied by assisting countries will be put under the United States control. The General of the United Nations would be U.S. General Douglas MacArthur. North Korea was pushing the American forces back to the city of Pusan, and if actions were not taken soon, the American forces would be pushed back into the Sea of Japan. What was left of South Korea was the southeast corner of the Korean peninsula, with the Naktong River acting as the only form of a natural barrier, and a strong stand was needed to fight back against the communists. Soon, the units supplied by the United Nations poured in from the docks of Pusan to help the American forces defend the city, which was all that was left in the South Korea's possession. U.S. Lieutenant General Walton H. Walker said, "There is no line behind us to which we can retreat. Every unit must counterattack to keep the enemy in a state of confusion and off balance. We will fight as a team. If some of us die, we will die fighting together. We are going to hold this line. We are going to win." A strong stand was taken, and the UN forces fought with everything they had. The North Korean forces could no longer fight as their men, ammunition, and supplies were dwindling down, which led to the retreat of Korean forces. With the North Korean forces somewhat weakened, General MacArthur thought it was the perfect time for an attack. This attack was the Battle of Incheon. The mastermind behind this attack was General Douglas MacArthur. General Omar Bradley said, "It was the riskiest military proposal he has ever heard of." Incheon was probably the worst possible place ever selected for the amphibious landing. Even though military strategists expressed a lot of doubt to this plan, MacArthur said, "The enemy, I am convinced, has failed to prepare Incheon properly for defense. The very arguments you have made as to the impracticabilities involved will tend to ensure the element of surprise."
General MacArthur decided to make an amphibious attack behind the enemy lines at the transportation and communication hub which centered around Seoul.
Surprise is the most vital element for success in war. He would then sail in from the Yellow Sea and take the port city of Incheon, just 20 miles west of Seoul, the capital city. It has always been a wise strategy to attack behind the enemy, but MacArthur's idea appalled the Joint Chiefs of Staff when they heard it. The Joint Chiefs, who were part of Truman's cabinet, countlessly attempted to sway MacArthur's decision and take the safer route into Incheon. Incheon would give him the best chance for success because he would catch the enemy commanders completely off guard. Like his own people, they would think that no sane man would dare attack the city from sea. Finally, on July 18, 1950, President Truman gave the green light for MacArthur to invade his way. MacArthur would let nothing get in his way of supporting the South Koreans in containing and attempting to end communism in Korea. MacArthur assembled 70,000 troops and more than 250 ship transports for the invasion. Many vessels from the UN took immediate actions into taking a stand as well. MacArthur had run into a problem 2 weeks prior to the invasion with a place called Wolmi-do that had much artillery. MacArthur decided to send bombardments on the east and west coasts of Incheon, and Wolmi-do included. By doing this, it threw off the North Koreans as to where a possible attack may occur, and therefore they did not send support to Incheon or soldiers for lookout. The strategic ways of General MacArthur paid off because the 4.5-hour battle was already over and the island was in the hands of the United Nations and South Korea. Soon after the vast pushback by the United States and the UN in Incheon, MacArthur wanted to deteriorate North Korea even more by wiping out their communist forces entirely. With this said, President Truman was very hesitant initially on making this call to continue the pushback. Truman's goal was to make sure this battle didn't turn into World War III. After continuous amounts of nudging and effort by General MacArthur to receive permission to attack again, he was given the go by the President. The UN and the Americans started driving once again, but only to be wildly outnumbered. The reasoning behind this was that the Chinese had sent an ample amount of troops to fight alongside the North Koreans, to prevent total loss of the northern peninsula. These two dynamic and dominant communist forces had forced the UN's forces back to the 38th parallel. After this event, President Truman had made the call to stop pushing and to leave the Korean Peninsula as it initially was. Both North Korea and South Korea agreed to cease fire in July of 1953, but the tensions between the countries still remain high till this day. At any point in time, these tensions could erupt into the next Korean conflict. Although the forces of the UN did not take over the rest of Korea, they did stand up against the spread of communism. This shows the remarkable rise against the Reds.